Hello, Giselle. How are you?
Fine. And you?
Fine, thank you. I'm gonna talk to you about the greatest happiness principle about John Mill. It's known as the utility or the greatest happiness principle, and it holds that actions are right in proportion as they tend to promote happiness, and wrong as they tend to produce the reverse of happiness. Mill instead states that pleasures and freedom from pain are the only desirable ends. Everything that is desirable is desired because the pleasure that provides the most of it promotes the pleasure and it reduces the pain. Mill adds that quality and quantity to the utility or greatest happiness principle, saying that we should seek to the richest amount of happiness we can so we can reduce the pain in our lives. Mill says that utilitarianism recognizes the power of sacrifice and has to increase the good of all. But sacrifice ourselves is good, but it's better when it leads to an end. So it makes the population happy. Do you understand that? Oh, okay. Mill acknowledged that the individuals do not always take the greater social concern into mind because social concern isn't a motive, but it's a measurement of judgment and sanction. Happiness sometimes is confused with content, but they are not the same. That's why I'm going to talk to you about higher and lower pleasures. Uh, Higher pleasures are generally the intellectual ones. And by that I mean the ones you can enjoy, like um, listening to a classical music piece or maybe reading a good book. Pleasures that are intellectual, and lower pleasures are more sensual, but physical. In ethics, the highest good is the one that produces more pleasure. By happiness is intended by pleasure and the absence of pain. By unhappiness, pain and deprivation of pleasure. Happiness is intended pleasure, but in the absence of pain. By unhappiness, pain and deprivation of pleasure. Mill believes that the superiority of a pleasure is determined by a person who has experienced both, but Mill prefers higher faculties as pleasures. A person with high faculties requires more to make happy and can suffer more intense pain, but they will never want to be a lower being. Mill says that those who choose lower pleasures over high pleasures do because they cannot obtain the higher. Like, for example, um, we can achieve higher pleasures because we know more about culture, but instead, poor people can um, desire more physical pleasures because that's why they have more near them. Men lose their high aspirations as they lose their intellectual tastes and as they have neither the time and the opportunity to reach higher faculties. By that, Mill contends that there are two components to justice. The first one is to desire to punish a person who has done harm, but this desire comes from the impulse of self-defense and the feeling of sympathy. Sympathy is when you can feel happiness for another person. By that I mean, if maybe you're feeling happy, I can feel happy. That means I'm being sympathizing with you. For example, all animals have instincts of self-defense. However, unlike animals, humans are capable of sympathizing not only with their offspring, but with all human beings. Furthermore, humans are more intelligent and they have a wider range of sentiments and that are able to feel that they are part of a broader community of interest. The categorical imperative is in an ethical system of Kant. It's an unconditional moral law that applies to all the reactional beings, and it's independent of any personal motive or desire. This has two formulations. The first one, which is part of the first universal maxim according to Kant, says that we have to act according to the maxim that it will become the universal law. This has the perfect duty and the imperfect duty. The perfect duty is when we first have a duty to not act that maxim that result in logical contradictions when we attempt to universalize them. And imperfect duty based on the pure reason, but it allows desires in how they are carried on practice, because this depends on the subjective preference of humankind. This duty is not as strong as perfect duty, but is a moral binding. The second formulation says, act so that you can always treat others as an end and not use them to get to an end. By that I mean that when we do an action, we should do it because it's going to benefit not only me, but all of us. And we don't have to use people to get to that end that only is going to benefit me. But Kant has 5 rules that's for an action to be good. The first is categorical imperative, that all actions are moral and good if they're performed as a duty. The second formula is of universal law. Actions must apply to everyone and always result in good. Third, the formula of humanity as an end. We never treat anyone as means to an end. 4 is the formula of autonomy, that's manipulating another person to go against their moral right and or good is wrong. And the 5th is the kingdom of ends. In here we imagine every maxim you employ in every action you take is forming a group of set laws that for a humanity in an imaginary kingdom of ends. And here's the categorical interment. It's like a mathematical formula where first you express your maxim. Second, you rewrite that maxim as a universal law. But you ask yourself if this is going to lead to a logical end or if it's contradicting. If it leads to a logical contradiction, you don't do it. But if it leads to a logical contradiction, you go ahead to the next step. The next step is a contradiction in the will. If it occurs, my will, do it. And if it doesn't, you don't. By that, I mean that sometimes we have a lot of money. Well, not a lot, but more money than we need. So there's people in the world that don't have enough money to maintain their family or even themselves. So what we are inconscientiously doing is we are murdering someone, maybe not here but in another part of the world, because with that money that we have and we don't use, we could give it to an organization and they could help that family. So maybe, for example, I'm living in a big house and I'm only one person that's living in that house. So what I could do is maybe sell that house and buy a smaller place, and maybe the money that I have and I am not going to use, I can give it to that organization that's going to help a lot of families, maybe not here in Mexico but in other places of the world. So that's a way we can help the poor people and stop the murdering. Self-respect means that the practitioner properly applies all of the principles to itself. This includes seeking counseling or therapy and opportunities for personal development. And there is an ethical responsibility to use supervision for appropriate personal and professional support on development, and to seek training and other opportunities of continuing professional development. But actually we sometimes don't have a lot of self-esteem because we compare ourselves to others and we use others to measure ourselves. Like, for example, maybe I am a happy person, but someone can be maybe smarter in some things, and I start to comparing myself to that person, and maybe I can feel inferior, and my self-esteem starts to go down. But we don't have to use other persons as a measurement. We have to use the moral laws for this. And now dignity, it means recognize maybe some other person. For example, you are talking about a different opinion and I can not listen to it and I refuse to concord with you or something. That means I'm not recognizing your dignity. But if I listen to you and I'm an open-minded person and I listen to your ideas and maybe I accept them, I am recognizing your dignity as a person.